Page 230, Chapter 13, Emmanuel and the Sabbath. At that time, Emmanuel walked through a field of grain on the Sabbath, and his disciples and disciplesses were hungry, and began to pluck ears of grain, and to eat them. When the Pharisees saw this, however, they spoke to Emmanuel, quote, "Behold, your disciples and disciplesses are doing what is not allowed on the Sabbath." But he spoke to them, quote, "Have you not read what David did when he and those with him were hungry? How he went into the house of prayer and ate the showbread, which neither he nor those with him were permitted to do, but only the priests? Or have you not read in the law how on the Sabbath the priests in the temple violate the Sabbath, and yet are without guilt? Truly, truly I say to you, you brood of snakes and adders, a stone will turn into bread before no work may be done on the Sabbath. You make your discretions into laws, in which case, however, these have no equal value with laws. Your approvals are made by you yourselves, and by your false prophets and priests without discernment or intellect, as are also many other approvals by human beings. For even much of these discretions are against the laws and recommendations of the creation, because they are contradictions to them, or because they contradict them. Therefore, an approval by the human beings does not correspond to a true law, so it is truly a discretion that is completely open to question, or doubtful. False prophets and distorters of the Scriptures are the guilty ones responsible for these false discretions, which you lay out as laws. So because of these laws, because you follow them, you contradict the laws and recommendations of the creation and of nature. You wrongly teach that which is deemed to be good by the human being, that the Sabbath is to be kept holy, and, thus, no one is to fulfill the day's work. But a discretion does not correspond to the truth, and it escapes or contradicts the fresh or healthy power of good of thought or the intellect, because that which is deemed to be good corresponds to a false and confused teaching from the spirit or consciousness of the human being or human consciousness. Truly I say to you, no Sabbath is to be honored as that which is deemed to be good or as a law, and no law of the creation dictates that no work is to be done on the Sabbath. Thus, the Sabbath is a day like any other day on which the day's work is to be done, but every day is to be appreciated as a day of celebration, so that each conscientiousness or duty is done worthily. Everything is written thus in the old writings of the laws and recommendations of the true prophets. So it is also written in the writings of the true prophets, that the false prophets and distorters of the Scriptures and Pharisees falsify the writings of the true, quote, teaching of the prophets, and will also do this in the coming time. And he walked on from there and came into their temple, where he continued to teach the people. And behold, there was a man who had a badly swelled or swollen hand, and they asked him, quote, "Is it also right that one becomes healed on the Sabbath, in order that they would have a further cause against him?" But he spoke to them, quote, "You hypocrites, you are without eyes and ears, and without discernment or intellect. If you could be given all these, then you could see, hear, and understand. But you are blind or unattentive, and without discernment or intellect, because you lack the knowledge that you may see the nature and may hear and understand it. Therefore you lack the cognition into the laws and recommendations of the creation, so you do not see, hear, or understand that the creation does not keep the Sabbath holy, or does not control, honor, or appreciate the Sabbath. Every Sabbath day the creation rotates the stars in the firmament, and regulates the sun and winds and rains, and nourishes all creatures on earth. It keeps the rivers flowing in their beds, and everything goes its normal course, so day to day, and on each Sabbath, as on any other Sabbath, just as the creation made it. But are not human beings much more than all creatures and plants? Thus they are masters over them all, when they follow the true laws of the creation. You brood of snakes and adders, you distorters of the Scriptures and falsifiers of the teaching, who, because of your greed for compensation, or money, and might, spread confused teachings, If you had only one sheep and it fell into a pit on the Sabbath day, who among you would not take hold of it and pull it out? How much more now is a human being than a sheep? And then your confused teachings, which you teach untruthfully or lyingly, and falsely and confusedly. Then he spoke to the man with the swelled hand, quote, "Stretch out your hand." And he stretched it out. And Emmanuel coated it with the herbal ointment. And he also gave the man a small pot of the ointment, so that he could coat his hand with it every day. And when Emmanuel had applied the herbal ointment, and had given the small pot, he said that the hand would be healed again in 3 days, and would be equally healthy as the other. Then the Pharisees went out and held counsel about him, on how they could assassinate or insidiously murder him, since he saw through and recognized their lies and confused teachings, and made them known in front of the people. When Emmanuel recognized their insidiousness, he withdrew from there, and a small crowd of people followed him, whom he taught. And there followed him some sick people, and he treated all of them, so they soon became healthy after a few days. He warned them, however, that they should not spread the news about him, because he was afraid that he would be captured and put to death by torture, as he had seen in his foresight. But his dedication to the truth prevailed, and so he continued to reveal his teaching and the wisdom to the human beings, even though he knew what would happen to him when they got at him, or got hold of him, captured him. Therefore, he would be delivered over to the court.